The Dutch government collapse is a lesson for Farage. Yeah, the latest twist in European politics might be unfolding across the North Sea, but its warning sirens are echoing all the way to Westminster, where Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK and Britain's most persistent political disruptor, would be well advised to pay very close attention. Because what just happened in the Netherlands is not just a local government spat or another forgettable EU melodrama. It's a full-blown imposition of a populist-led coalition that took power on a wave of anger, promised radical change, and then ran headfirst into the hard brick wall of political reality. In November 2023, Geert Wilders shocked Europe by leading his right-wing Freedom Party to first place in the Dutch general election, riding high on a wave of nationalist sentiment, anti-immigration rhetoric, and a promise to shake the political system to its core. And yet, less than 2 years later, Wilders walked away from government, his ministers out, his credibility wobbling, and his polling numbers falling faster than you can say coalition compromise. And why? Because in office, Wilders discovered something every populist eventually learns the hard way. Being in power doesn't mean having power. Despite leading the largest party, Wilders gave up the role of prime minister, allowing Dick Schoof, a former civil servant with zero democratic mandate, to become the face of the government. And that might have sounded like pragmatic coalition building at the time, but to voters, it looked like surrender. And it got worse. Wilders failed to secure any binding commitment on his core issue, immigration. He wanted the Netherlands to have the strictest asylum policies in Europe, to stop building new asylum centers, and to close the door on what he called unsustainable migration. But his coalition partners weren't interested in radical reform. They used the wiggle room in the coalition agreement to slow walk, stall, and sabotage. So when Wilders finally pulled the plug, it was clear he'd spent more time in the coalition losing credibility than building support. His party is slipping in the polls. His allies have seen their support collapse. And the whole project of right-wing populist governance is now back on the drawing board. So, what does this have to do with Farage? Everything. Because unlike Wilders, Farage benefits from a British electoral system that could, if the stars align and the votes split just right, put him into Downing Street with as little as 30% of the national vote. In a first-past-the-post world, you don't need to be liked by everyone. You just need to be liked by the right people in the right seats. And yet, that very path to power is fraught with danger, because winning is only half the battle. The real test is what happens next. If Farage needs the Conservatives to form a government, as is widely expected, he would be wise to negotiate a coalition deal before the election, not after. Not during the political equivalent of a 5-day speed dating sessions like we saw it in 2010. Because British voters do not tolerate chaos well. They expect a government to form quickly. And Farage would be making a massive strategic error if he strolls into number 10 without already having the mechanisms of power locked, loaded, and agreed in advance. But even if he somehow wins an outright majority, he will still face an even more daunting coalition. The one with Britain's civil service, judiciary, and permanent administrative state. Yes, the so-called blob. And unlike party politics, that coalition isn't negotiated with handshakes and manifestos. It's navigated through preparation, competence, and an intimate knowledge of how Whitehall really works. And right now, Reform UK doesn't exactly look ready. Their energy policy was met with near-universal mockery from both sides of the net zero divide. Their tax and benefits proposals drew criticism for resembling a wish list scribbled on a napkin, generous giveaways without a trace of fiscal realism. And worst of all, Their signature issue, immigration, still sounds more like a slogan than a strategy, with little clarity on what taking back control would mean in the age of labor shortages, economic volatility, and a European migrant crisis that shows no signs of slowing down. And that's where the Dutch collapse becomes a cautionary tale. Because voters don't reward populists just for making noise. They reward them when the noise leads to action, concrete, measurable, delivery-driven action. And when that delivery fails, the punishment is swift and brutal. Just ask Boris Johnson. Between 2019 and 2024, he promised to get Brexit done, level up the country, and control immigration. By the end, all three promises had melted under the heat of political inertia, economic mismanagement, and ministerial musical chairs. And voters noticed. And they delivered a reckoning. Wilders walked into the same trap, lured into government without the leverage to implement his core platform, outmaneuvered by more experienced coalition partners, and out of options when those partners stopped playing along. Farage, despite his decades in public life, has never held national office, never governed, never managed a department, never had to implement policy under scrutiny, under pressure, or under the gaze of international markets. Which means that unless he and his party get serious about the governing side of politics, not just the campaigning side, then he risks repeating Wilders' journey, entering government with high expectations and exiting it with his base disillusioned, his movement splintered, and his legacy tarnished. So yes, the Dutch government collapse is a lesson for Farage, a lesson in over-promising and under-delivering, a lesson in mistaking electoral success for executive power, and a lesson in what happens when the populist wave crashes against the rocks of bureaucracy, compromise, and, yes, reality. Because power, as every serious politician knows, is not about winning the microphone. It's about delivering results once you've taken the podium. And if Farage doesn't learn that lesson now, then one day soon he might be giving a press conference that sounds suspiciously like Wilders' final speech, full of regrets, excuses, and promises that never quite made it out of the coalition agreement. In politics, as in poker, it's not enough to play the hand. You have to know how to win the game. And the Dutch collapse just showed us how quickly even the loudest players can fold. And if you want to see another video, the next one is right here in the end screen.